What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. Going to give you a very early projected record for the Kansas Jayhawks. Take a look at their 2024 schedule. Of course, it's a different era with Kansas football. This used to be the laughingstock of the Big 12. Now, all of a sudden, they've become a contender, and I think they're among the top contenders in 2024. But let's get to the schedule. First, we'll look back at 2023, and you can see a 9-4 record. They lost at Texas, at Oklahoma State. No shame in losing either one of those games. Kansas State was a good team. They lost to them. And then Texas Tech, that's probably the one you'd like to have back. But yeah, this team was not far away from having a really good season last year. And the schedule, they played Missouri State, Illinois, Nevada in the non-conference. It's going to be a similar non-conference schedule this year. Here is that schedule. We'll break it down. First, the non-conference. Lindenwood, that's, I guess, an FCS team. I don't think I've ever even heard of that school. They'll play them. They'll play at Illinois, and then they'll play UNLV. You look at the home games. Again, the two non-conference games, and they'll play TCU, Houston, Iowa State, and Colorado. So because they do play Illinois on the road, they're going to get four. Actually, no, they get 4 home games despite the fact that they play Illinois on the road. So I'm surprised they did not wind up with 5 conference games at home. That's interesting there. Usually, with all these conferences that have 9-game schedules, usually they schedule it to where they'll have the big non-conference game at home, and then they'll play 5 road games, 4 home games in the conference. Or if they play that non-conference game on the road, then they will play 5 games at home in the conference, 4 on the road. So it's usually split up to where your 10 Power 5 games, you have 5 at home, 5 on the road. So that's interesting. That's kind of something that jumps out when you look at the schedule. But this is a very manageable home schedule. TCU, Houston, Iowa State, Colorado, Kansas should be favored in all those games. But again, there's Illinois and the 5 road games in the Big 12 at West Virginia, at Arizona State, at Kansas State, at BYU, and at Baylor. West Virginia and Kansas State, those appear to be the toughest games looking at it right now. But the other road games, of course, will be a challenge, but definitely games that Kansas can win. You look at the schedule here. Again, they open up with Lindenwood on Thursday night. Then they'll play on the road at Illinois on September 7th. UNLV on the 14th. Then they'll go on the road to play West Virginia on the 21st. So a couple of big road games in the first month of the season, Illinois and West Virginia. They get TCU on September 28th at home. And then it's a road game at Arizona State on October the 5th. Then they get their first bye week before playing Houston. Not really an ideal. I think I'd rather have that bye week before going to Arizona State. Or maybe it's nice to have it after the road trip. You can have some recovery time before you get ready for Houston. Then they'll play Kansas State after that on the road on the 26th. And then another bye week. So their bye weeks are pretty close together. They'll get the next one after Kansas State. And then they finish out the season with Iowa State on the 9th. At BYU on the 16th, Colorado on the 23rd, and on the road at Baylor on the 30th. But again, you look at the schedule, it's not too tough. I think West Virginia and Kansas State on the road, those are going to be the 2 toughest games for them. And they're not in terrible spots on the schedule. So, yeah, this schedule sets up pretty nice for Kansas. Let's get to the record projection. And again, this is the scale that we use. If it's under 20, over 80, those are pretty much guaranteed wins. 20 to 29, 71 to 80, those are games that I think the spread's going to be double digits. You're going to have a pretty clear favorite, pretty heavy favorite in those games. 30 to 39, 61 to 70, games where I think the spread closer to a touchdown, 6, 7, 8 points. Those are games that you're going to have a favorite, of course, but it wouldn't be a big surprise if the underdog won that game. And then your 50-50 games in the white, 40 to 60%, those are really games that could go either way. So we'll start with Lindenwood, UNLV, 2 easy wins right there. Of course, UNLV is probably closer to 80% than 100%, but I think Kansas should be able to take care of business in both of those games. And then you get to the games in the purple. A lot of games in the purple where I think Kansas will be favored by about a touchdown. We're talking about Illinois on the road. And if you're wondering about the tier system here, Kansas is kind of a high-end tier 3 team. Illinois is kind of a low-end tier 4 team. And so that one was close to being a 50-50 game, but we're going to put that one in the purple. TCU at home. Again, Kansas should be favored there. Arizona State, very similar to Illinois, low-end tier 4 team. Houston at home. Iowa State at home. And Colorado at home. Iowa State might wind up being closer to a 50-50 game. We'll see how good the Cyclones are. If that was on the road, it would definitely be a 50-50 game. But playing at home, Kansas should have a slight advantage there. And, Colorado's kind of the wild card. They could be a top 25 team this year, or they could struggle again like they did last year. They've got some interesting pieces, so we'll see what Colorado looks like. But right now, and again, this is not a prediction, this is just a very early projection. Right now, I've got Colorado there in the purple. So then you've got West Virginia on the road, Kansas State on the road. I think Kansas probably will be an underdog in both of those games. Teams that are very similar, and those are also Tier 3 teams, and you have to play them on the road, so that should cause Kansas to be an underdog in those two games if the teams are as good as we expect them to be right now. Obviously, a long ways to go. I think Kansas probably favored against BYU and Baylor, despite those games being on the road. Both of those teams are not great, and so I think that they've got a really good shot at winning both of those games. And you could even, it's so hard to separate these teams right now. You could argue that BYU and Baylor are really closer to Illinois and Arizona State, and maybe those games should be in the purple. But I think BYU and Baylor have a little bit more potential than Illinois and Arizona State. I think Illinois might actually be the worst team in the Big Ten this year, and Arizona State's really struggling. So, you could tweak some things there and maybe change some of these percentages, some of these colors up. But if you did that, it really wouldn't change the projection, because they were right on this number. So their projection for 2024 is 8-4, and they were like right on. It was like 7.9. So if you bump some of these games up a little bit, you're probably not going to get that projection all the way up to 9-3. And if you bump, let's say, Illinois and Arizona State down to 50-50 games, you're still probably going to get 8-4. So I think it's a pretty fair projection. We've seen this with the teams in the Big 12. A lot of the top teams kind of have the same projection. And that's just because they're all in the same tier and they all play similar schedules. And that is the case here for Kansas. Just like I think Arizona and Utah. Kansas State was 7-5 because their schedule is a little bit tougher. But again, that's the projection, not our prediction, just a very early projection. 8-4 for Kansas. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Where would you project this team? Let me know your thoughts on the Jayhawks down in the comments below.